Hi and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Game of Thrones Season 8. In this video I will review Season 8 of Game of Thrones as a whole. So I have to start with a spoiler warning for Game of Thrones up to the very end of the show. If you haven't seen all of Season 8, then you will not want to watch this video. Otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, Season 8 is not good. Pretty much everyone knows this. There's a few people who enjoyed it, and good on them if they can find enjoyment out of this. But I think even those who liked Season 8 will recognize that it was rushed. In fact, a lot of people defending Season 8, and I've already talked about this at length, will throw out a lot of straw mans and a lot of things that don't apply, but when they say it's rushed, they're like, well, I know it was a bit rushed, but here's the thing they're not getting. But nothing. People who don't like Season 8, that rush part is a deal breaker for them. They think that the rushed was way too rushed. It ruined the entire show. And one of the strawmans, and I had this whole video about the strawman, so I'm not going to get too much into it here, but the most prevalent one, in my opinion, is, oh, you're not happy with what happened. That's a strawman. Speaking for myself, and I think the majority of people are unhappy with this, everyone I talk to anyway, not just on YouTube, but in real life, everyone I talk to is fine with what happened for the most part. They're fine with Daenerys going mad and killing a bunch of civilians. They're fine with Jon killing Daenerys. They're fine with the Night King getting killed by Arya. They're fine by pretty much everything that happened in the show. But they're not fine with how it was done. They're not fine with how it got there. They're not fine with the rushed pace of it. They're not fine that it felt very out of character. It felt out of the blue because it was all rushed. It was not built up to properly. That is the main issue. So, but nothing when you say, oh, it was rushed, but. That's a deal breaker. For not just for me, but for most people. I think anyone who looks at this show as a whole, as a one story, which you should, I would argue. A show like this that is telling one story. It makes sense to look at it as one story because it is one story. And you see a huge pacing difference. Now for me, of course, this is a huge deal breaker for me because if you're familiar with my channel at all, pacing is a big issue for me. It's something that's very important to me. Those who watch The Expanse, which I would recommend is a great show, would know that I wasn't as high on Season 3 as a lot of other people were, even though I still loved it. I wasn't as high on it because I thought they rushed through the second half of Season 3 because they thought the show was going to be canceled, or that it might be canceled. I know they didn't know it was going to be canceled, but I know that they assumed it could have been, and they were right. So they were rushing to get to a certain point, and they rushed through the season a bit, and that was an issue for me because pacing is a huge thing. Now, with Game of Thrones, if you look at the show as a whole, Season 1 and 2 had a very steady but slow pace. Season 3, I would argue, and before the last two seasons came out, was my least favorite season, but Season 3 is a masterpiece when compared to Season 7 and 8. But Season 3 was my least favorite season for out of the first 6 anyway, because it was too slow paced. Not a lot happened in it. And then Season 4 it picks up the pace a little bit, but it still got that same pace as Seasons 1 and 2. And Season 5 still got that slow but steady pace of the first 2 seasons and Season 4. And in Season 6, it started to pick up the pace a little bit. It started to run through things a bit fast, like Arya teleports from Braavos to Westeros, and Theon and Yara teleport from the Iron Islands to Marine, and not even getting to Varys. But it's still negligible. It's still acceptable at this point. In fact, it's all acceptable up until you get to Season 7, Episode 5. That's when the show just starts sprinting. And if you compare, and I might do a whole video comparing the pace, saying what the first 4 seasons, the pace of the first 4 seasons would have been if it went at the same pace of Season 7 and 8. Because you compare the pace of the show, starting with season 7, episode 5, going all the way to the finale, final episode of season 8. It is incredibly, compare that to season 3, like it's insane. If going at the same pace that season 7 and 8 did, you could do season 3 in 2 episodes, maybe 3. Instead of 10, if they were going at that pace. It's ridiculous. In fact, the finale of Game of Thrones, that could have been 5 episodes easily. That one episode could have been stretched out into 5. In fact, the finale was so fast-paced, it was comical. It was actually a lot of people said it felt like a parody of Game of Thrones, because it was comical how things just happened. Boom, 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 boom. Like, the pace was outrageously fast. Now, you notice when I said the pace started speeding up a bit in season 6, although I still like season 6 a lot. But you notice the significance of that is that's when the showrunners ran out of book material to adapt from, and they basically had a vague outline. And the reason why I think season 6 wasn't that bad is because the outline they had to go off of was not so vague, because most of the stuff is probably loosely based off of The Winds of Winter, which George R. R. Martin had written half of it, and he had very detailed plans of where he's going with that one book. But when you get into season 7 and season 8, you just get vague outlines that he's not even sure. He just has specific points here and there, and Dan and Dave knew the specific points to get. So what I'm saying is, the further they got away from George's source material, the faster they went. And that's why a lot of people are thinking Dan and Dave are bad writers, because as soon as they ran out of source material, the show started getting bad, which I disagree with, because as I said, I think season 6 was really good, one of the best seasons of the show. In fact, a lot of people have this argument of, everyone seems to agree season 8 sucks, but what frustrates me is they're not lumping 7 in with 8, because they should. And some people say, oh, what didn't start with 8, it started with 5, season 5 or season 6. Some people says only the first 4 seasons are great, and the show started getting bad at season 5. No. Sure, season 5 and 6 had some cracks showing, like the Sand Snakes in season 5 and Arya's Wolverine regenerating the powers in season 6. Sure, but you can actually point out faults within the first 4 seasons. You had the whole thing with Yara running away from giving the huge speech about how she's going to rescue Theon, and Ramsay just released some dogs. She's like, okay, fuck this, I'm running away. That doesn't make any sense. And season 1 had some of these pointless scenes, like Maester Pycelle doing aerobics. What the fuck is this shit? And Rawls? What's the point with Rawls? She was completely unnecessary. They just had to show more boobs in the whole exposition of season 1. So don't give me that. Every season had its down points. Not just season 5 and season 6. The first 4 seasons as well. So I would actually put all 6 seasons together as awesome. Best the show's ever done. Even the first 4 episodes of season 7 were pretty good. Even those I would into. As I said, season 7, episode 5 is when the show started sucking, because it started going at this ridiculous fast pace. Now, here's the thing, because before season 8 came out, I was so upset over season 7, because that's when I realized, and a lot of people seem to be late to the game and just figuring this out in season 8, but I realized that they were running at such a fast pace, and that there was no possible way season 8 could be good. First of all, they dug themselves in such a hole, and secondly, there was only 6 episodes, so I knew we were going to get more of this fast pace. So before season 8 came on, I had really no interest. A lot of people were like, oh yeah, I can't wait for the end of Game of Thrones. And I'm like, it's going to suck, because season 7 was so bad, there's no way that season 8 could recover. And damn, I hate it when I'm right. I said before season 8 started, I would love nothing more than to be wrong. And here's the thing, the show lured me into a false sense of hope, because the first 2 episodes of season 8 were actually pretty good. They actually were not fast-paced. They actually had that same character, slow paced, developing the characters. You see all the character interactions you want to see, like everything I didn't get in season 7. I was getting in those first 2 episodes of season 8. So like, lured me into a false sense of hope. And I thought, wow, I was on board with season 8. I thought it was going to be great. Even episode 3, a lot of people love to shit on episode 3, and don't get me wrong, I have a lot of issues with it, especially in retrospect, seeing what they did do with the rest of the show. But before I knew that, I was still willing to trust them because the first 2 episodes were so good. And, you know, I'll get into Night King later, but I was not happy with, you know, the way they ended his story, just like everyone else, but I would have been okay with it if what happened in episode 3 had consequences going forward. But it had no consequence. It seemed to, in fact, and what I mean by consequence is not that we learn more about the White Walkers. What I mean is for the characters, for the character stories, that the events of the Long Night affected the characters and the character dynamics in a certain way going forward, and they all acknowledged and were affected by what happened with the Battle of the White Walkers. But as far as the character stories go, it's like it never existed. It like erased it clean. The only real effect from that was Daenerys was upset at Jorah's death. And that's pretty much it, which is bullshit, because this is the thing they've been building towards all this time, so it should affect our characters more. And so at that stage, I still would have been fine with episode 3. I would have been fine with them not answering anything about the White Walkers, and I would have been fine with Arya killing the Night King if what happened there had consequences for the story. But it didn't. It almost erased it. There was like Jon Snow and Daenerys, they came together in North, and Daenerys' forces, they came together, they fought in fellowship, they saved the world. Daenerys dropped everything. She dropped her ambitions for the throne, and she went and saved the world. And after that happened, it's like it never happened. They completely ripped it out of her skull, out of her character, erased it. It's like nothing ever happened, and she was ambitious the whole time. They didn't form a fellowship with the North. Arya and Sansa went right back to hating Daenerys and being like, we want our independence. It's like the Long Night had zero consequences whatsoever, and that is what I didn't like. So I hate episode 3 in retrospect, but there's ways, if they would have landed the last 3 episodes correctly, there's ways I would have been happy with episode 3 as is. Now, episodes 4, 5, and 6 are complete and total shit. There's no saving them. As I said, well, the only way, there's no saving them as is. But the way to save them is that it should have been an entire season. Those 3 episodes should have been an entire season. Now, and in retrospect, it's even worse than the last 3 episodes of season 7. Because the last 3 episodes of season 7, I said should have been 6 episodes. When I did a video of how I would write season 7, I made like the first 4 episodes are still the same 4 basically, but when I got to the last 3, I doubled them and turned them into 6 episodes, which is, I stand by that. So those 3 episodes should have been 6 episodes. These 3 episodes at the end of season 8 should have been 10 episodes. They should have been an entire season just on its own. In fact, like, a lot of people saying that season 6 and season 7 should have been, season 7 and season 8 should have been 10 episodes each. I would go further. I think season 7 and season 8 should have been 30 episodes. I'm sorry. I mean, you could even like put in season 6 in there and say this, it could be 40 episodes, and maybe they could stretch season 6 out a bit. If they were keeping the same pace that seasons 1, 2, 4, and 5 had, then it would, basically. Season 6, 7, 8, and 9 would be 10 episodes each, and we would have 40 episodes. Yes, I'm saying there should have been the season 9. 10 episodes in season 6, 10 episodes in season 7, 10 episodes in season 8, and 10 episodes in season 9, if they were keeping with the same pace as the first 2 seasons. And if they were keeping the same pace as season 3, then this fucking show would be like 15 seasons long. And that's why it's so frustrating to look at the show in retrospect when you watch season 3 and then you watch season 8, and it's insane, the pacing difference. As I said, if we're going at the pace of season 8, then season 3 would have fit into like 2 episodes, or maybe even 3. And if we're going at the pace of season 3, then season 8 could have been like 30 episodes just for season 8. It's just inconsistent, and that's just, I think some people say, oh, you're looking at the show wrong, Mark. It's a TV show. It's not supposed to do that. But I disagree. I think that is how you're supposed to look at it. A show that is telling one story should be moving at the same pace. There's plenty of shows that do move at pretty much the same pace the whole entire time, like Vikings does, or The Leftovers. Just watching The Leftovers, that show's amazing, and it's paced out perfectly. Most shows are. This is insane. Now, when I talked about Lost, way before years ago, I was worried that Game of Thrones would have an ending that's worse than Lost. But I was like, nah, that's never going to happen. It's not going to end that bad. They know what they're doing because these first 6 seasons were so amazing. Some of the best television ever put to screen. It's just mind-blowingly good. The character stories, the action, everything is just so complex, so well thought out, so well written. There's no way this show could end as badly as Lost. And arguably, it ended worse than Lost. I would argue that. Because Lost's issue, his main issue, I'm not happy with the final season of Lost at all. But the main issue, that's the thing that's associated most with Lost, is that it had an unsatisfying ending. That it set up a lot of mysteries and either gave unsatisfying answers or didn't bother to answer at all. It just left all these mysteries hanging, which a lot of people weren't happy with. That's Lost's thing. Game of Thrones thing, what it will be known as the show that just rushed the ending, that felt like the showrunners did not care about the show anymore and they just wanted to hurry up and get it over with. That is what it felt like. Now, a lot of people, there's a lot of speculation, argument online. Some people saying, Dan and Dave wanted to do Star Wars, and so they just wanted to get it over with. Other people saying Dan and Dave were tired, and they didn't get to see their families, so they just want to get this show over with. Other people are arguing that's not the case. They did all these great seasons. Maybe it's just because they didn't have books to go off of. But we don't know. It's all speculation. But that's kind of irrelevant. The bottom line is, it was rushed for whatever reason. Maybe they were tired, maybe they didn't care, maybe there were production issues, maybe because the actors were aging or going on to do movies that they didn't want to do the show anymore. They're worried about contractual issues, they're worried about losing actors. Maybe Dan and Dave just wanted to see their families again. Maybe it was getting too much of a hassle filming in all these different countries. We don't know. We don't know why it is that they felt the need to rush through these 2 seasons. And some people argue, it wasn't Star Wars because they didn't come up with they wouldn't know about the Star Wars when they were writing season 7 and season 8. I'm not so sure I know that, because it seems like they would have made this deal with Star Wars a long time ago. But whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why. Point is, we don't know why. But for whatever reason, it's obvious that the same care, the same precision, the same thought out character development, character story, well plot out, complex storytelling that we saw for the first 6 seasons, not 4, 6, for the first 6 seasons, was completely abandoned in favor of hitting the plot points. And it really does come out as if it does come off as these are plot points that George gave the showrunners, because that's what it comes off as, that these are plot points, and in particular this series finale. As I said, it's like, oh, we know that maybe George told them that Jon kills Daenerys, so boom, he kills Daenerys. And they told him that Daenerys goes crazy and kills a bunch of people, so boom, that happens. And we told him that Bran becomes king, okay, so boom, that happens. But none of it was earned. None of it felt like the same storytelling that we got in season 3, where everything was long drawn out, everything was thought out, was developed. And this, again, it kind of irritates me when people say, oh, just season 8. This started in season 7. Season 7, especially those last 3 episodes, were just as bad. The way they rushed through Littlefinger's death it was not true to his character at all. The conflict between Arya and Sansa was so rushed through. It was comical. The Night King getting a dragon, like, that made no sense. Alright, so let me just, I don't want to harp too much on this because I did my own individual episode reviews. You can check those out for more details. But let me just want to quickly go through each character. Let's start with Daenerys. And this is where I think a lot of people who are arguing against people who don't like the show get caught up in Daenerys. And they think that it's all about, the argument becomes, did this work for her character or did it not? Or are you just too much of a Dany fanboy to not see that she was actually foreshadowed? Here's the thing. There was definitely dark foreshadowing through her character because, well, it's based off of George and Tyrion. And I have no doubt that this is what George is working towards. He is working towards her, killing a bunch of civilians, becoming the Night Queen or whatever. So there are seeds that have been planted throughout the entire show that this could happen. So what you do with seeds is you let them grow naturally, and they slowly grow over time, and they become this thing. So that's kind of like the way the story works. You have these seeds, you cultivate them, and you slowly grow. But because these final 2 seasons were rushed, that's not how it worked. It was like the seeds were there, it was growing, and all of a sudden, Dan Dave just artificially built a robot and made it grow tall longer, and this is artificial monstrosity, not a natural plant. So it didn't come off as a natural character development. It came off as a plot point that they just wanted to rush and get to, so it absolutely made no sense for her character. It doesn't matter, like this whole thing about if you're a Daenerys fanboy or you wanted her to be queen or you wanted her, you just can't stand the fact you didn't see the foreshadowing. I saw the foreshadowing. I saw the darkness. I saw this was in her character, but they did not get there at a natural pace. They just all of a sudden, boom, I'm going to kill Cersei. I mean, I did a whole video that there's ways why not kill Cersei, kill all the civilians in King's Landing. I did a video that there was ways that even within those 6 episodes, there's ways that they could have made more sense. If they just had some sort of reasoning, some sort of thing that felt good for a character, but they didn't even try. But really what they needed to do is have a lot more character development. And this whole thing, Jon Snow and Daenerys and Jon Snow killing her, that was not satisfactory. I could see like the concept being a good concept, but the way it played out on the screen, I had no investment in it at all because I never had any investment in the Jon Snow Daenerys romance in the first place because it was simply rushed through. You compare that to someone like Jon Snow and Ygritte, this is something that was cultivated, something that was tended to and earned. You got Ygritte in season 2, and then slowly she starts to, have something for Jon, and then she slowly, gets him into the wildlings, and in season 3, they start to become a couple and become a thing, and by the end of season 3, they betray each other, and by the end of season 4, we get a whole season of Ygritte saying, I want to kill Jon, but Tormund's like, I know you still love him, and by the end of the season, when she sees him again, and he smiles, she just collapses, and then, she gets killed because of it, and she dies in Jon's arm. That was earned because that was cultivated, that was built up to over 3 seasons. The Jon and Daenerys thing was blah, 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 happened in like 6 episodes. Like one episode they meet, next they're yelling at each other, next episode they're in love, and then this so you have zero investment in this romance whatsoever. It is not at all the same kind of storytelling. A lot of people who like these 2 seasons, that's fine. That's your personal opinion. If you like that kind of storytelling, that's your thing. But the reason why the majority of people who like the show, watch the show from the beginning, don't like season 8 is because it is objectively, not a matter of opinion, it is objectively a different kind of storytelling than we got in this first 6 seasons. Now, maybe you're okay with this different kind of storytelling, but a lot of people aren't, because that's not what they're used to with this show. That may not be what they like. They may not like this rushed character development. They like, and that's why they're attracted to this show in the first place. That's why they love the show. That's why they became huge fans of it, because it was so thick with earned character development that made a lot of sense. Now all of a sudden you don't have that, so of course you're going to say that this is not the same thing, that this is crap, particularly compared to the first 6 seasons. Now, to argue, to say maybe if there was another show that had this kind of pace from the very beginning, maybe we might like it more than what we do. But the fact that it is attached to something that's not supposed to be like this way. It's historically well thought out, well developed. Anyway, speaking of Jon Snow, a lot of people point out that he didn't really do anything this season, which is absolutely true. They've been building up for his whole storyline. He died and was resurrected. This is from the book, so it's obviously leading to him doing something great. Now, an argument could be made that it was leading to him killing Daenerys, and by him killing Daenerys, that makes him Azor Ahai, because Daenerys was going to conquer the world and kill a bunch of people, so he's the one who stopped it. He stopped her from wreaking havoc on the world. Therefore, he's the hero, and that's what his whole story was building to. One could make that argument that that's what the showrunners were going for, but I don't think you can make the argument that's what they accomplished. Because you had to... They rush to it so much, that's not how it comes off as. It comes off as Jon Snow was literally doing nothing all season. They were supposed to have he was supposed to be conflicted between his loyalties to his family and his loyalty to Daenerys. But again, it just gets back to what I was saying, that the romance with Daenerys was never earned in the first place. Therefore, you don't feel the conflict. And, of course, I went all about the whole ending about him being, exiled to the Night's Watch, which makes no sense, because why did the Night's Watch even exist? Maybe if the show spent the entire season talking about this and earned the fact that Night's Watch still exists, and they earned the fact that Jon would have to go up north even though Grey Worm's leaving, then maybe it would be okay with it. But they didn't earn shit in this season. Alright, so let's talk about Cersei. She's been having a great storyline for the entire show. She's someone who's very lust, power hungry, and she became, once her children died at the end of season 6, no holds barred. She's just gained completely all about gaining power, and whoever she has to kill, she has to kill. And so she had a very interesting story arc where sometimes she would be able to outsmart her opponents, but then she would get very arrogant and then do something really stupid like she did with the High Sparrow, which ended up having to do in the Walk of Shame. And so there's a storyline to be had here in these final seasons of her being all arrogant because she got a few wins on Daenerys, and she got too arrogant up herself, and then Daenerys just came and killed her. But again, this storyline wasn't earned, mainly because Cersei's wins did not feel natural, like the way that Euron was able to just ambush the dragon, just kill it very quickly, and then in the very next episode, those scorpions that so expertly, easily killed that dragon were fucking useless, and Daenerys just came by and destroyed them all. That is not earned. That is not a good ending for Cersei. And the fact that a lot of people point out that she did nothing all season but just sit on her perch and look out into the city and didn't really do anything. So you don't really feel anything for her in that moment. And plus, they try to make you feel sorry for her. They have her talk about her baby and how she doesn't want to die. But again, that was not earned. So you don't feel sorry for Cersei. You just feel angry at the showrunners for trying to make you feel sorry for Cersei because it doesn't work. And then the whole thing with the Golden Companies, they had this went all the way back to like season 4 when they had the Iron Bank. They mentioned the Iron Bank and there was this huge debt. It was an ongoing storyline that's going on forever. And season 7 accumulated where Cersei paid off the Iron Bank and was able to get a huge loan to get the Golden Company. So the Golden Company represent this huge built-up storyline that's been going on since season 4. And what happens? They die instantly. And they're fucking useless. So that's when you invest in the whole storyline about loans and banks and debt. Just blows up instantly from these magical dragons who all of a sudden can just kill everything, where the episode before they were useless and were easily killed. Alright, so let's get into the Night King. So the Night King... This is, speaking of storylines that have been building up forever, this, of course, is a huge thing that everyone's very angry about ever since episode 3, because the White Walker threat was the first scene in season 1. It's been a constant background. It's been a huge thing in the background. Like, it's been growing bigger and bigger. Season 5, Hardhome, of course, really is when it started to kick in. And then season 7 almost entirely was about, hey, don't worry about this Game of Thrones things. We have, this evil force of zombies coming from the north to kill us all. And as bloody of the battle was in episode 3, and as scary and devastating as it all was, it does seem like they were defeated too easily. And plus, it seems like there weren't really any consequences from that battle, because as I said, like the next couple episodes it seemed to have zero impact on any of the characters. But more than that, like when you have this scene where you show all the Dothraki just run away from the troops and just with their horses, and a very poor battle strategy where they all get killed, and you see all the lights go out, and you pretty much see them all get killed, Dan Davy and suddenly after the episode. Well, that's basically the end of the Dothraki. 3 episodes later, there's the same amount, just as many, tons of Dothraki in King's Landing cheering for Daenerys. You can't. And a lot of people will say that's a nitpick, but it's not, because it's just indicative of the kind of storytelling that's being told. Because how are you supposed to get invested in the stakes, in the characters, if there's no consequences for what anyone does? Because the Dothraki getting slaughtered in episode 3 is just magically undone 2 episodes later. And like the next episode, they said there were half of the Dothraki were still alive, which I don't. After watching that scene, that is not what was portrayed on the scene. A hell of a lot more than half. Almost all of them, except for like 6 guys, basically. And then half, okay, you have to just, suspend disbelief, maybe half survive. But then you get into episode 6, and there's just as many as there were before. That's not fucking half. That's the same amount that was in season 6 or season 7. So nothing has consequences, and that is the issue. And you may, and it's the same thing with the Scorpions. You may be like, oh, that's nitpicking. No, it is terrible writing that would have never happened in the first 6 seasons. Bar a few examples, like the Wolverine, the Arya thing. But even that, I would argue, is not nearly as bad as fucking all the Dothraki dying and then all of a sudden they're all alive again. Like, Nothing. So how are you supposed to be invested in anything that happens in the show when shit like that happens? But anyway, like, I, like a lot of other people, thought there should have been a lot more to the Night King. That the Night King story should have been tied to the ending of the show. Because it was a huge thing. There was some mythology. Why did the White Walkers wake up after thousands of years? That was never answered in the show. What the thing with the spirals? What particularly did the Night King want? All we got is, he wants to erase all the memory of Westeros. Which, why? Like, what gets back? I mean, you go back to season 6, they had this huge revelation that he's this weapon of mass destruction that went out of control because the Children of the Forest created this weapon of mass destruction, the White Walkers, to kill men because they were at war at the time, but they lost control of them, and eventually the Children of the Forest had to fight against this. So I always make analogies to the Doomsday Machine in Star Trek. It's a weapon of mass destruction that gets out of everyone's control, even the people who created it, and just goes around killing everything. Fine. But they didn't really play into that this season. They didn't. If that's their motivation, they need to explore that more. They need to fill in the gaps and explain it. And I think it's not necessary, but it would have been really good storytelling. And then this is where a lot of people are, the other straw man is, you're just unhappy your theories didn't come true. No, I don't give a fuck about my theories. If the theories about the White Walkers and them making a truce, or them being this, having this tie to prophecy, all that, throw it out the window. I am fine with that, just as long as you do something just as interesting, if not more interesting, to replace it. Instead, they did nothing. They did jack shit to replace it. That's the theories coming true or not is not the fucking issue. The issue is they did nothing. They had this opportunity, they had this storyline with all this mythology, with all this build-up, all this character investment, and they did nothing with it. It didn't even affect the characters. The characters seemed to just go back to being who they were after this battle. There seemed to be zero effect. It's like this whole huge threat. We were told over and over again, the world's going to end, the world's going to end, this is the biggest threat, and they just have one battle, and it's like the threat never existed. Alright, so let's talk about Tyrion Lannister. This is a character who was ruined in Season 7. Some people will say Season 6, but I'll argue against that. I think he did do some great things in Season 6 with Meereen. Sure, he was not as interesting as the character as he was in Season 2, but I don't think he was ruined. Season 7, even the first 4 episodes, ruined Tyrion. He was an idiot. Every single plan that he came up with was stupid. He underestimated Cersei in every turn. It was defeated by her at every turn. And this season I thought, Daenerys says, I need you for your mine. So I'm like, okay, well, what mine? Because everything he's done in the past year was idiotic. But maybe they're foreshadowing. They're building Tyrion up to do something smart. He's going to be good. They're going to show that he's intelligent and he's going to do something. No. Instead, he's like, hey, everybody, let's go wait in the crypts while we're waiting for this necromancer who's capable of raising the dead. and then he does jack shit. He does jack shit, and don't even get me started on his big revelation. Well, everybody loves stories, so let's have the story. I'll get into Bran later, but that's stupid. And so when he becomes Hand the King by the end of the show, not earned, just like everything else in this show. Anyway, let's talk about Arya Stark. Another one of my favorite characters, ruined by these last 2 seasons. This one in particular ruined my favorite character. She had this whole arc, this whole story arc of she was traumatized from a young age. She's a trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma, and that really fucks someone up. That affects your psyche, and that's what we saw play out, because her whole life became about revenge. So she went to this dark, mysterious place with these magical, face-changing people, and she learned to become one of them. She learned their craft. She learned their skill. She became this dark-ass assassin, but instead of killing for them, she returned to her homeland to kill for her own purposes. So that we saw in Season 6, where she killed Walder Frey, and in Season 7, she killed all the other Freys. That was for her own purpose, and then she had this choice. She could continue this lust for revenge or see her family, and their family ran out, so she went back up to Winterfell, and that's where everything started going to shit. Now, I do like the contrast of her trying to reintegrate into this family life while at the same time having that dark side. But they didn't really play on that. And first of all, her killing the Night King, a lot of people are upset with that. As I said, this could have been done well, but it wasn't, because they needed to earn this. But just by having Melisandre show up and quote something from Season 3, which obviously was not meant in that context, and say it in a different context, it was supposed to be, okay, that's her purpose. That has never been her purpose. That has never been what her story is building to. Her story was building to getting dark revenge when the Mountain and Cersei. And so after the Battle of White Walkers, okay, now they're going to get back to that. That's what her whole life has been building towards. So she goes with the Hound, and she tells him, and he flat out why she's going, and he's like, fine, let's get there. So they get to King's Landing. Everything's falling apart, like the whole city's being destroyed, and the Hound, when they're right there, right ready to get to Cersei, the Hound's just like, don't go because you'll die, and Cersei's going to die anyway, so it's totally pointless, and you need to go turn around. And she's like, okay, thank you for telling me this, Sandor. Bullshit! I do not buy that. That was not, in the slightest, tiniest bit, was that earned. Again, this could have worked if they had more episodes, if they drawed out of storyline, if they built to her letting go of this revenge. But they didn't. They did the opposite. They showed that she was still holding on to this because, again, she's this traumatized girl who's fucked up in the head, and all she had to live for is revenge. And just as the episode previous, even earlier in the same fucking episode, they showed that's still who she was. And then all of a sudden, just because Sandor says she's going to die anyway, she flips a switch and goes to try to save innocent young people instead. Don't buy that. It is ruining her character, and plus they're turning her, she's this dark fucked up character who like ripped this guy's eyes out and like mutilated him, killed him in the most disgusting way. And this season she's a hero who kills the evil Night King, who instead of going on revenge goes off and tries to save women and children from the disaster happening. It's a two-dimensional dumbing down of a really dynamic, dark, complex, interesting character, which is what they did to pretty much everyone. They did the same thing to Daenerys, who was also a very complex, dark, interesting character, and they just dumbed her down and turned her into a Hitler wannabe. And Jon Snow, again, he was a dark, complex, but they just dumbed him down and turned him into this, oh, I love her, she's my queen. They did this to everyone, and that's why people don't like the season. Not because, oh, what you didn't want to happen happened. Oh, because your theories didn't come true. None of that bullshit. It's because they dumb down, and none of the characters are true to who they are. And the whole thing with her going west of Westeros, like they had one line in season 6, so I had been predicting this. And that's what people say, oh, you're upset that your theories didn't come true. Well, in this case, my theories came absolutely true because I predicted ever since that line in season 6 that would go west to Westeros. So, by your reasoning, I'd be happy because my theory came true. No, I'm not happy because it's stupid, because it wasn't earned. I don't care that my prediction came true, because this should have been built up to. There was nothing in the show to show that she had the desire to explore, other than that one line. That one line even itself came out of nowhere. Her whole story arc had been building towards dark revenge. It hadn't been building toward becoming an explorer. There's ways to get from dark revenge to explore, but they didn't do it. They just like snapped their fingers, and all of a sudden you're supposed to accept it. You're supposed to accept just because the Hound tells her to turn around, that she does. Which, you know, they say, oh, but Cersei was going to die anyway. But she has been living her entire life for revenge. Her whole life has been about getting revenge on this one person who's at the top of her list. Just because she's about to die doesn't mean jack shit. Doesn't mean she's just going to give that up. Just because some guy who's supposed to be her friend and mentor tells her, oh, you're going to die, that's not enough to make her give that up. Her whole life has been about killing this one person, and she wants to do it. She doesn't want some fucking dragon to do it. She doesn't want some fucking falling ceiling to do it. She wants to do it, just like she had said her whole life that her biggest regret in life was not killing Joffrey. She didn't care that Joffrey died. She wanted to be the one to do it. So don't fucking tell me that she would just give up and go and not kill Cersei because her life was in danger. Fuck her life. She doesn't care about her life. She cares about killing. Now, again, you could have done it this way if you had earned it, if you had showed the change in character, but they had zero character development for her. Alright, so let's talk about yet another character. I don't know if there is any such thing of a character who wasn't ruined this season. Well, let's talk about Jaime Lannister. I'm not going to harp too much on this because everyone knows this. This is probably the most obvious one. I've seen some people trying to defend this, but yeah, you're on a very weak hill there. You got a weak position. I think you know this. It's very commonplace. People know that Jaime's whole character story is ruined this season because he's been on this redemptive arc ever since the third season, which I didn't like, but this show actually got me to like it. And I thought that Jaime was actually one of the best things about season 7, where he realized how fucked up Cersei was. She was willing to let the whole world die just for her power. And so in that moment he realized what a waste his life had been with her and how she's poisoned and how he needs to get away from her. So he left her. He didn't, even though she was pregnant with this child, he didn't care. He left her. He went to do the right thing. He went to Winterfell to save the world, and he did. And he saw someone who actually was a very good person, someone who loved him. So he got with her and found the kind of peace that he never had. So, we are meant to believe, because Sansa told Jaime that Daenerys is about to kill Cersei, which he already knew because that's the whole point, and her going there is the whole point in Jon going there. He knew they were all going there to kill Cersei, but he decided to stay behind because he became a better person and he no longer cared about it. So just because Sansa tells him something that he already fucking knows, we're supposed to believe that he all of a sudden changed his mind. That entire redemptive arc, that entire leaving her, realizing she's poisoned, realizing she needs to get away from her, that just vanishes, and he all of a sudden goes back to being just the person he was before. What? That does not make the tiniest bit of sense. Now, a lot of people, including myself, assumed that he was going back to King's Landing to kill her. And this is where you get that straw man again. Oh, you're just upset because your theory didn't come true because Jaime didn't kill Cersei. No! We're upset because that makes zero sense for character development, for the way his character was established. The reason why we were saying that he was going to kill Cersei is not because we want our theory to become true, it's because it would have made sense for his character. Him going back to be with her in the dying moments makes zero fucking sense for his character. Anyway. Well, I didn't realize I was going to get so upset over this, but I should realize whenever I'm talking about this shit season. It's not this is because it's a shit season. It's because this was the best show ever, and it deserves so much better than what this rushed half-assed piece of shit. Anyway, let's talk about Sansa. I did not have a big of an issue with Sansa. I had predicted that she would become queen of the Seven Kingdoms. I was wrong. She became queen of the North. That's fine. I think that makes sense. That's kind of ironic because as a child she wanted to get away from the North, and now she ends up being the ruler of the North. It's a good story arc, but again, just like everything else this season, it was not earned. What happened was good. How it happened, not good. As I said, and I already talked about this, the Battle of the White Walkers had zero effect on her character. She just went back to hating Daenerys, went back to the North being independent. It's like nothing has anything to do with nothing. There's no character development here. And she just asked Bran for Norse independent, and he's like, okay. And everyone else in the Six Kingdoms is okay with it. And again, some people try to defend this. There's no fucking defense for this. This is ridiculous. Iron Eyes should have been like, I want my independence too. Fucking Dorne should have been like, I want my independence. And then the other places, just like the Reach, whatever, be like, hey, they're getting independence. I want independence too. And this gets back to, again, not because it's my theory, no, because it makes sense for the fucking story that there shouldn't have been any king, that the fucking Seven Kingdoms should have went their own separate ways. That would have made sense. What happened here, just the North going the way, but everyone else is A-okay with staying in the Six Kingdoms. That's bullshit. That was not earned. Again, there's a way, I suppose, if you had more episodes, more seasons, if there were 9 seasons, like I said, of 10 episodes each, 90 episodes altogether, not fucking 72, maybe you could get to this point where this would make sense. But here, fuck no, it doesn't make sense. Anyway, let's talk about Brienne of Tarth. She's probably the character I think was less ruined by season 8. I didn't have that issue. Like that whole scene with her becoming the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, one of the best moments of season 8. One of the only moments that actually really worked. And yeah, so her story arc is fine. I mean, it's tainted by Jaime's, the way that he left her, because that doesn't make sense for his character. But the way she honored him at the end with the King's Guard, and the way she became the Lord Commander of the King's Guard, that's what she deserves. So that's fine what they did with her. Although I do think it would have been better if she just died. Honestly. She should have died in season 7. Although we do want to see her become Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. So maybe at the Battle of the White Walkers. But anyway, it's fine. Let's talk about Samwell Tarly. Why the fuck is he the Grand Maester? I mean, I can't get over this. Did he just abandon Gilly, or did Bran sort of take over the Citadel and strong-arm him and force them to make Samwell? That's the only scenario that makes sense in my mind, is that the Bran, because he's this unfeeling computer now. He doesn't give a fuck. He'll just send armies to just kill people and bend people to his will. I think he's going to be the most ruthless and horrible king in existence, personally, but that's just me. Anyway, the only scenario that makes sense in my mind is that he sent an army to the Citadel and just fucking killed all these maesters. You see all these maesters die, and then they took it over, and he's like, I fucking control you now, and I say Samwell Tarly is going to be the Grand Maester. And I'm like, okay, we're all dying. We'll listen to what you say. Just stop killing us. And I'm like, alright, not only is Samwell Tarly going to be Grand Maester, but he's going to be allowed to be fucking married and have a kid. And you're going to like it. And I'm like, okay, you ruthless dictator king, fine, we'll do what you say. And that's the only scenario where this makes any sense to me. Anyway, since we're on the topic of Bran, let's talk about Bran becoming king. This is probably the least earned thing to happen in the show. As I said, it makes zero sense. And a lot of other people, I've seen a lot of other videos that point this out, where Tyrion is like, well, who has a better story than Bran? Well, arguably, every other character in the whole fucking show has a better story than Bran. So why don't they have become king? let's make fucking Hot Pie king. I'm sorry, people saying, oh, it's ridiculous, Hot Pie is not a lord, and Brand's the lord. But no, Brand's not. He said he's not a lord. He gave up. He's like, I don't want any of this shit. Make Hot Pie king. It would have actually, I guarantee you Hot Pie would be a better king than Bran. Bran's is I mean, they ruined Bran's character. He was never that interesting character in the first place, but they completely fucked up his character in season 7 where he became this unfeeling robot. I am Bran. And he's done jack shit. I don't want him to be king. I want him to do something with his fucking powers. I want him to make a difference, to fucking warg into something, to see something, to reveal something of the past, like something to do with the White Walkers that has relevance to the story. But no, he just sits there like an idiot and walks into some ravens for no fucking reason, and now he's king. We're supposed to be okay with this. We're supposed to think this is a happy ending. This is a ruthless tyrant who's going to be worse than Daenerys. Mark my words. Anyway, let's talk about Grey Worm. The whole bullshit with him saying, oh, you choose your king and I'll let you. So he let his prisoner, who betrayed his queen, choose the king, and nominate a king, and then he let the family of the other prisoner that killed his queen choose the king. And once they chose the king, who is in fact the cousin or brother, however you want to say it, of his other prisoner who killed his queen, and he's going to listen to what he says. Oh, God damn it. And you know, Grey Worm's turn, I guess, is tied into Daenerys' turn, which wasn't earned at all. I mean, it makes, you may say, oh, because Grey Worm lost Missandei, he'd go in this bloodlust. But I don't buy it, because Daenerys' turn just makes no sense how she became this Hitler character who was like, I want to conquer the world and break the will, and the break the will thing makes no sense in this context. She's talking about killing people, and then she goes to Jon and is like, oh, we're going to help them, and it's obviously she's become, like, that's not how fucking... Alright, I said most things in this season would have worked if they had more time, if they didn't rush through the story so much. There's two things in particular I think would never work regardless of how much time you have. Number one is Jaime's turn and him going to be with Cersei when she dies. I already talked about that. That makes no sense in any scenario. I don't care how much time you had to build up to it. It makes no sense. Second thing is fucking Daenerys' Hitler speech and the finale where she's in what she says to Jon afterwards, like, oh, we're gonna help people, you know this is the right thing to do, but she's talking about conquering the world and killing tons of people. Nothing, it doesn't matter how much time you had to build up to that. Nothing, no scenario would make that make any sense for her character. And it doesn't make sense for Grey Worm's character to go along with that, because his whole thing has been about freeing the slaves and whatever. The reason why he loves Daenerys so much is because she helped the small folk. If she turned into a Hitler character, I don't care if he lost his love of his life or not, he would be able to tell this. So I don't buy anything he does either, so whatever. Anyway, we get to Theon, another character that actually had a good story arc this season. The first episode, and they just rushed through him rescuing Yara, which I'm okay with, because I'm actually didn't really want a long drawn out story with that. So that was rushed, but that was kind of skipping over something I didn't really want to see, so I wasn't too upset. But his whole story arc of wanting to return to Winterfell, and because that's where he's raised, and make good with the Starks, and he gives his life protecting Bran, okay, that works too. But Euron is the issue, so let's get into Euron. He's a joke. Like, I actually kind of liked him in season 7. I thought he was okay. I mean, he's nothing like his book counterpart, but he did kind of work as this scary villain who, like, when he was, like, attacking Yara's fleet and he came crushing down on that thing, yelling like a madman. Like, that was actually cool. I actually liked that. So, I mean, his whole season 6 introduction, of course, was flawed. The let's go murder them. But I actually liked what they were doing with him in season 7. But this season, like, his story makes no sense. Like, this whole thing with being with Cersei and how easily he killed the dragon. And then his final battle with Jaime is a fucking joke. Like, I was just laughing my ass off with that because it's so dumb. And why would he kill... Because Euron story was with Theon or Yara. So if you kill Theon in episode 3, then you should have Yara there. She should be the one to kill Euron, not Jaime. Like, they had... Again, this is something that could have been fixed if they built up to it, if they actually earned this, but they did not at all in the slightest. This character was a joke. The whole fight scene with Jaime was a parody scene. It was funny. I was laughing my ass off. Anyway, let's talk about... I already talked about the Hound a bit, so let's talk about Clegane Bowl, I guess. This was really... This is fan service at its worst. They didn't do anything to build up to this properly. And the Mountain himself, like, he was introduced in Season 6, and he, like... Or Season 5, sorry. And then in Season 6, he took the spear and ripped his head off. And since then, he's done jack shit. He just stood around and looked scary. And so his whole story is building up to him, like, having Clegane Bowl, where he kills his own creator. And his whole programming, since his death, when he became this undead mountain, was about protecting Cersei. He was always protecting Cersei. You can't fuck with Cersei, or he will fuck with you. And just because he sees his younger brother, he's supposed to buy that he just doesn't care about Cersei anymore. That's so stupid. This is a fan service in the worst possible way, and I had no interest in this fight between the Hound, this Clegane Bowl. I had zero investment because they did nothing to earn my investment. Alright, so I think I'm sick of talking about this shit. I pretty much said all I want to say about Season 8. The first 2 episodes were okay, and there were some good moments, but if you look at the Season 8 as a whole, this is even worse than Season 7. This is some of the worst, especially that finale, rushed writing I've ever seen. Like, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the movies like Congo or Ender's Game, or I'm trying to think of another. The Dark Tower. Movies that are based off of novels that try to cram fucking like a novel's worth, which could take up maybe 10 hours of screen time, and tries to cram it into 2 hours, and nothing feels earned. Everything feels rushed. You have no investment in any of the characters because they just fucking rush through what other pieces of fiction had taken their time with to develop these characters. Like, you don't even have to read the book to know that they're rushed. Like, I never read Dark Tower, but watching that hour-and-a-half movie that's based off of like 6 novels, I could tell because I had zero investment in the characters. And it's funny, in this situation, it's not even based off of anything. And in fact, that's the issue. Because when it was based off of something, when the showrunners had something to go off of, they took their time to do it right. And if you listen to what Dan and Dave would say, they would say that we only need 7 seasons. Which, they did do 8, but again, the 7 and 8 were condensed, so that was a compromise with them and HBO, because they wanted to do 7 seasons of 10 episodes. They're like, okay, fine, you can do the last 2 seasons in 13 episodes instead of 10. That was their compromise, and it's beyond obvious that they needed a fuck ton more. And I could tell this, again, all the way, I made this video way back after Season 4 aired, because I could look at the pacing of the first 4 seasons, and I could see how much story was left, and that there was no possible way that they could finish this story off in just 3 more seasons. That they needed at least 4, if not 5 more, to do it properly. So they need to be 8 full seasons, or better yet, 9 full 10-episode seasons. That's what they needed to have, and they didn't get it. And I don't know if Dan and Dave actually believe that all they needed was 7 seasons. All they needed was 72 episodes. All they needed was 13 episodes to finish off the story, because maybe they just didn't know how to earn these character developments anymore now that they didn't have source material to go off of. I don't know. I'm just guessing. It certainly seems that way. Either that, or they lost interest and they just didn't want to do the story justice. It has to be one of the two. Anyway, my rating for Game of Thrones Season 8 out of 10 is a 3, very poor. Now, 3 is being very generous because there's some good parts, some good ideas, good concept. There's good. The first 2 episodes were really good and touching. I even like the 3rd episode out of context. When I rewatch the 3rd episode, it doesn't upset me. It's like, I can see that's kind of interesting. It's when you get into episodes 4, 5, and 6, especially 5 and 6, is when my blood starts to boil, and I just don't think those episodes fucking work in any way, shape, or form. But the thing is, like, even those episodes had beautiful, amazing cinematography and like really great production value. Like the acting was all top notch. Like the whole, like if you look at the aesthetics, and this is what I'm saying, and I don't want to be insulting to anyone who enjoyed season 8, and I apologize, but this is just my personal perspective, opinion. If I turn my brain off, I would enjoy episode 5 and 6 because they look beautiful. Like, the acting is amazing. But if my brain is on, then I remember the character development and how none of this shit is actually earned. So I see, if you look at it from a very superficial perspective, you could see how this could be amazing. How this could be good, but if you look at deeper, you see how empty and unearned and rushed and just hollow everything in the last 3 episodes were, and pretty much in the whole season. And that's a result of showrunners who just either don't know how to work off of material because they don't have the source material anymore, they don't know how to create their own material, or they just don't care. They just don't fucking care. But as I said, I'll give it a 3 out of 10 because it does look amazing. And that's the thing. You see these writers, you get these quotes from these writers who's saying it's disrespectful that fans hate badmouth season 8 and they hate it and they sign a petition to redo it. And they say it's disrespectful for everyone that worked on the show. All the, the set designers, the actors, the stunt people. And here's what they don't get, is that the people who signed that petition, the people who are upset at season 8, are not upset at any of those people. Not upset at the actors, the stunt designers, the musicians, the set designers, any of that. We all acknowledge, I don't think I've seen anyone out there who didn't acknowledge that they all did top-notch, top-of-the-line jobs. What we're upset at is that all that hard work, that talent, that great, all that craftsmanship was wasted on a shit story that was rushed. The only people we're upset with is the writers. That's it. That's why the petition was for to have season 8 done again from different writers, because that was the only thing wrong with the show. It wasn't the actors, it wasn't the set design, it wasn't the music. Oh my god, the music was amazing. It wasn't the special effects. All that was top-notch, but we'd rather see all that top-notch quality done to a good script. It's not wasted on this bullshit. So anyway, I have to give it a 3 because of that top-notch quality. I have to acknowledge how amazing the aesthetics, the acting, and everything except for the writing. Even the directing was fucking great. Everything was good about the season except for the writing. And unfortunately, if you don't have good writing, then you don't have a good story. And if you don't have a good story, then all that other shit doesn't matter. It's just wasted. But, as I said, some things worked, and I do have to acknowledge this. So that's why I go as high as a 3 out of 10. If not, I'm very tempted to give this season a 1 out of 10, but I do think I need to acknowledge just how great that is. Anyway, that is it for my review of Game of Thrones Season 8, and I will be finished with Game of Thrones on my channel. I just don't want to talk about the show anymore after Season 8. Maybe years from now, I'll be able to look back on the earlier seasons, because I still like the earlier. It's just, some people are like, oh, some people are letting these 2 seasons interfere with their enjoyment and throw the whole show away. No, I still acknowledge that the first 6 seasons were masterpieces, just like I still love Lost, and I still acknowledge that the first 4.5 seasons of that show was great, even though the last 1.5 season was total shite. And it's going to be the same thing with Game of Thrones, but it's left such a sour taste in my mouth that I'm not going to want to cover this on my channel anytime soon. I will be doing a live discussion video, however, tomorrow night with Don Willie and Josh Nana from the Geek Setters. Of course, if you're watching this video later, which a lot of people do actually watch it much later after I make it, then that live discussion would have happened a long time ago. But even so, you can check it out in the link in the description below for that live discussion, where we'll talk about Season 8 with a couple other YouTubers who also didn't like it. And so that we'll hash it out. But after that, that will be my last video on Game of Thrones for a good long while. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you do enjoy my channel, I would suggest that you check out some good shows I actually cover, like The Expanse and Star Trek. And I guess Lost is kind of the same thing with Game of Thrones, but I'm covering that too. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.